The first thing Caleb Monroe said was not help me. His wrists were tied above his head near the cracked window, his white shirt smeared with dust, his bare feet just brushing the warped floor. Vivian Hartwell stood in the doorway in a red designer dress, diamond ring flashing, 3 men in black suits behind her, and the assistant she paid to organize her perfect life was hanging in a room that looked like the city had forgotten it existed. Caleb turned his face toward the small door at the end of the hall. "Please," he said quietly, "don't let them touch my daughter's room." Between them, a little red music box lay on its side, playing 3 broken notes over and over. Derek Vale stepped forward, calm as a courtroom lie. "Ma'am, he stole company evidence. He's hiding it in the child's room." Caleb did not shout. He only looked at Vivian and whispered, "Ask your fiancé why he knows what's in there. If you walked into that room, who would you believe first? The powerful men in suits or the father tied up in front of you?" Comment where you're watching from, and subscribe if stories like this still make you question what justice looks like. Vivian did not move. Her heel rested on a torn sheet of paper. Her wedding rehearsal was less than 2 hours away. Her name was already printed in gold beside Grant Whitaker's on 500 invitations. Outside, photographers were waiting for the billionaire CEO and her perfect fiancé. Inside, perfection smelled like old paint, cold coffee, and fear. Caleb breathed through his nose, slow and controlled, because he knew what one wrong reaction could cost a black single father. His job, his name, his right to pick Nia up from school. The tiny apartment he kept warm by choosing bills in the right order. He had learned not to raise his voice in rooms where people already expected guilt from him. Vivian's eyes moved from the rope around his wrist to the red music box near the hallway. It was chipped at one corner, cheap, ordinary, the kind of thing no billionaire would notice unless a desperate man was staring at it like his whole life was trapped inside. Derek saw her looking. "Don't let him perform for you," he said. "Men like him know how to use children as shields." Something tightened in Caleb's jaw. Not rage. Restraint. "My daughter is not a shield," he said. "She's 8 years old." The sentence landed harder than a scream. For the first time, Vivian touched the engagement ring on her left hand. Black onyx set in white gold. Heavy. Perfect. Cold. One of the suited men reached toward the hallway door. Caleb's body pulled against the rope. "Don't." One word. Low. Controlled. A father's last line. Vivian lifted her hand. "Wait." The room went still except for the music box. 3 broken notes. Before there was rope around Caleb Monroe's wrists, there was a blue crayon in his daughter's hand. Nia sat at the small kitchen table, her cereal going soft, drawing the bald man she said had been watching their building. The man wore a black suit. On his finger, she had colored a dark ring so carefully that Caleb felt the room go quiet around him. Beside her bowl, the red music box sat chipped at one corner, wound down and silent. The same little box that would later lie on the floor while Derek Vale accused him of hiding company evidence in child's room. That morning, Caleb did not frighten Nia with questions. He did not rush to the window. He folded the drawing once and slid it beneath the stack of overdue bills like it was just another school paper. "Some people look important because they wear good suits," he said. "That doesn't mean you follow them." Nia looked up with her mother's serious eyes. "But you follow rules." Caleb gave her the better apple and kept the bruised one for himself. Only the ones that protect people. The apartment was old enough to complain before sunrise. Pipes knocked behind the wall. The refrigerator hummed too loud. A strip of linoleum curled near the stove, where Caleb had taped it down twice already. Rent was 8 days late. The electric company's final notice sat under a magnet shaped like a yellow star. Nia's school had left a voicemail about an unpaid activity fee, polite enough to be painful. Caleb placed each envelope in order by date, then by consequence. Old habits. Before grief narrowed his life, he had worked as a junior compliance analyst, the kind of man who noticed missing initials, copied signatures, numbers that arrived too clean. Now he was Vivian Hartwell's executive assistant, paid to keep a billionaire CEO's day from falling apart, while his own life balanced on paper he could not afford to ignore. He buttoned the same white shirt he had pressed under a towel because the iron had broken. Nia watched him smooth the collar. "You look important, Daddy." Caleb swallowed what that sentence did to him. "I just need to look on time." At the school gate, she held the red music box against her chest, then changed her mind and handed it back. "Keep it safe until I get home," she said. "Mom would be sad if it broke." Caleb took it with both hands, as if it were heavier than wood and metal. "I'll put it in your room." Nia nodded, then paused. "If Mr. Derrick comes again, should I be nice?" Caleb crouched until his eyes were level with hers. "You be polite," he said, "but you don't go with anyone I didn't name. Kindness does not mean opening the door to danger." She accepted that like a law and disappeared through the school doors. By 8:19, Caleb was on the bus toward Hartwell Meridian, one hand gripping the rail, the other holding the leather folder he had stayed up half the night organizing for Vivian's office. Around him, men in cleaner suits checked watches worth more than his rent. Caleb kept his eyes on the folder. Details mattered. Details were the difference between a mistake and a setup. His cracked phone buzzed as the glass tower rose ahead of him. A message from Vivian's private office flashed across the screen. "Bring the foundation control packet to the 47th floor immediately. Mr. Whitaker will be present." Caleb looked at the time. If he went upstairs, he would miss the call window with Nia's school about the man outside. If he ignored the message, he could lose the job that kept custody questions away from his door. The bus doors opened, and the rich world waited in glass and steel. Caleb Monroe stood at the open bus doors with Vivian Hartwell's message glowing on his cracked phone and Nia's school number still unsent beneath his thumb. "Bring the foundation control packet to the 47th floor immediately. Mr. Whitaker will be present." The call window with the school counselor was only 6 minutes wide. If he missed it, no one would officially note that a bald man in a black suit had been watching his daughter. If he ignored Vivian's order, he could lose the job that kept rent paid, custody questions quiet, and the red music box safe in Nia's room where he had promised to leave it. Caleb stepped off the bus. The Hartwell Meridian Tower rose in front of him like a polished verdict. Inside, the lobby floor was black marble, so clean it reflected the soles of his worn dress shoes. The air smelled of leather chairs, expensive perfume, and coffee no one carried in paper cups. Security screens glowed behind the front desk. Men in tailored suits moved past him without seeing him, except to make room with the small impatience people use for janitors, couriers, and assistants who were late to someone else's emergency. Caleb kept the leather folder flat against his ribs. Details mattered. Breathing mattered. Looking worried in a place like this made people decide what kind of man you were before you opened your mouth. At the security desk, the guard glanced at his badge, then at the folder. "Executive floor?" "Ms. Hartwell requested it," Caleb said. The guard looked at Caleb's cuffs, frayed from too many washes, then at the white shirt pressed as carefully as poverty allowed. "Bay scan." Caleb placed the folder on the tray. As it slid under the scanner, Nia's folded drawing shifted halfway out. "A Beitman." A black suit. A dark ring. The guard smirked. "Your kid drawing superheroes or suspects?" Caleb picked it up before the man could touch it. "My daughter draws what she sees." The guard's smile thinned. Upstairs, the private elevator opened into a hallway of glass walls and quiet money. Vivian Hartwell stood near the boardroom, white blonde hair pinned smooth, red lipstick precise, face unreadable. Grant Whitaker stood beside her, one hand resting lightly against her back like a signature on a contract. On that hand was a black onyx ring set in white gold. Caleb saw it and felt Nia's drawing burn inside the folder. Derek Vale stood behind Grant, bald head shining under the recessed lights, eyes flat when they landed on Caleb. Not surprised. Waiting. Vivian did not smile. "You're late by 3 minutes, Mr. Monroe." Caleb could have explained the school call, the man outside the building, the unpaid notices stacked on his table. He handed her the folder instead. "The packet is complete." Grant took one step forward and looked at Caleb as if he were a fingerprint on clean glass. "Assistants don't usually handle family foundation documents. They do when the CEO asks for accuracy," Caleb said. Quiet. Measured. No apology. A small silence opened. Vivian's eyes lifted, not warm, not trusting, but briefly still. Then Grant laughed through his nose. Accuracy is above your pay grade. Caleb's cracked phone buzzed again in his pocket. Nia's school. He did not reach for it. The top page in Grant's hand slid loose. A control agreement. A scanned signature line. A date that did not belong. Caleb reached out, not to take it, only to keep the page from falling. Derek moved instantly. Don't touch that. Every face in the glass hallway turned toward Caleb. His eyes stayed on the signature at the bottom of the page. Alana Monroe. Caleb did not say Alana Monroe's name out loud. He only stared at the signature at the bottom of the control agreement until the glass hallway seemed to narrow around him. The date beside it was 6 months after his wife's funeral. His hand hovered over the page, steady enough that only he knew what it cost to keep breathing normally. Vivian saw the change in his face. Not panic, recognition. "Mr. Monroe," she said, her voice colder than curiosity. "Is there a problem with that document?" Grant's smile disappeared for half a second. Derek Vale's eyes moved to Caleb's pocket, where Nia's school call had gone silent. Caleb lowered his hand. "The signature line is wrong." Grant gave a small laugh. "Now he reviews signatures, too." Caleb did not look at him. "I used to review compliance packets before I worked calendars." A few people near the glass wall shifted, surprised that the quiet assistant had once belonged to a world of numbers, dates, and legal paper they had never imagined for him. Vivian took the page from Grant. Wrong how? Caleb knew every answer could become a trap. If he said too much, he would look emotional. If he said nothing, the paper would keep lying. "The file code belongs to a later batch," he said, "and the scan border is cleaner than the rest of the packet. This page was inserted after the original set." Vivian looked down. Her face did not soften, but her eyes slowed. Grant stepped closer. "Vivian, this is inappropriate. He has a personal history attached to that name." There it was. The blade wrapped in manners. Caleb's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed low. "A personal history doesn't make a false date true." The hallway went silent. Derek reached for the folder. Security should hold the packet until legal reviews it. Caleb moved 1 inch back. Not enough to look defiant, only enough to keep Derek's fingers away from the folded drawing tucked inside. Vivian noticed. "Why are you protecting that folder?" Caleb opened it carefully and placed Nia's drawing on top of the leather cover. A bald man in a black suit stared up from blue crayon lines. The dark ring on his finger looked childish until Grant's hand flexed beside Vivian's shoulder. Caleb said nothing. He did not have to. Vivian's eyes moved from the drawing to Grant's black onyx ring, then to Derek standing too still behind him. It lasted less than 2 seconds. But Caleb saw it. So did Derek. "Children draw nonsense," Derek said, "especially when adults coach them." The accusation filled the hallway like smoke. Caleb folded the paper again, slower this time. "My daughter is 8, he said. "Leave her out of your mouth." No one mistook the quiet for weakness. Vivian lifted one hand before Derek could answer. "Send the packet to my private review queue. No one touches the original without my authorization." For one small breath, the room loosened. Not trust, not mercy, just a delay. Caleb used that breath to check his cracked phone. Nia's school had left a voicemail. Beneath it sat a message from an unknown number. He opened it with his thumb hidden against the folder. "Stop looking into your wife's files, or your daughter's room is next." Far across the city, inside the small room Caleb had promised to protect, the red music box sat on Nia's shelf, chipped, silent, and waiting. For one small breath, Caleb Monroe thought the truth had bought him time. Vivian Hartwell's order held the glass hallway still, and the original packet stayed in her hand instead of disappearing into Derek Vale's. Even Grant Whitaker went quiet long enough for the elevator wall to reflect his face back at him. Caleb looked down at the unknown message burning on his cracked screen. "Stop looking into your wife's files, or your daughter's room is next." Across the city, the red music box sat on Nia's shelf, exactly where he had promised to leave it. Vivian's eyes followed his hand to the phone. She saw something there. Fear, but not for himself. Then the private review monitor blinked, and a Hartwell legal analyst stepped out from a side office, pale and careful, holding a tablet against her chest. "Ms. Hartwell," she said, "the scanned border does look inconsistent." The hallway inhaled. Caleb did not smile. He did not look at Grant. He simply lowered his phone and waited, because men like Caleb learned not to celebrate too early in rooms where someone else owned the locks. Vivian turned toward Grant. "Why is there a post-dated page in my foundation packet?" Grant's face softened into concern so quickly it looked rehearsed. "Because your assistant has been accessing restricted archives." Derek already had his phone raised. On the screen was a security log with Caleb's employee number highlighted in red. "Copies made after midnight. File names connected to the Hartwell Foundation." A still image of Caleb leaving the print room with a folder against his chest. It looked clean. It looked official. It looked like guilt. Caleb remembered that night. He had stayed late because Vivian's calendar had 3 conflicting meetings and one unsigned clause that could have cost her control of a housing fund. He had corrected the packet without asking for praise, because accuracy was his job, and because families in temporary shelters did not get second chances when rich people signed careless papers. Kindness had a receipt now, and that receipt was being used against him. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Nia's school. Caleb answered before pride could stop him. The receptionist's voice came thin and strained. "Mr. Monroe, a man from Hartwell Security, asked if Nia could be released early. We did not release her, but he said there may be a custody concern." Caleb closed his eyes once. Just once. When he opened them, the hallway had changed. The marble, the glass, the quiet money, all of it stood between him and his child. Vivian heard enough to stiffen. "Custody concern?" Grant touched her elbow. "This is exactly why we cannot let emotion lead. If Mr. Monroe is using his daughter's room to hide stolen documents, legal has an obligation to act." Caleb looked at him then, not with anger, with recognition sharpened into silence. Vivian's lips parted, but board counsel arrived before she spoke, silver-haired and carrying a leather binder like a verdict. "Mr. Monroe," he said, "your badge is suspended pending review. Surrender all Hartwell materials and sign an acknowledgement that you removed confidential foundation documents without authorization." Caleb glanced toward the elevator. Every minute here was another minute Nia waited behind school glass. Every word he said could make him look unstable. Every silence could bury Alana's name deeper. Vivian held the packet tighter, but she did not step in front of him. Not yet. Derek leaned close enough that only Caleb could hear. "Go home. Bring me the red music box, sign the statement, and your little girl never hears the words family court." Caleb's hand tightened around Nia's folded drawing. His voice came low and tired. "A man does not trade his child's safety for his own name." Derek smiled. "Then choose which one you want to lose first." Caleb did not answer Derek Vale with anger. He looked past him to the elevator doors, thinking of Nia waiting behind school glass, and of the red music box sitting in her room like a promise he had not yet broken. The board counsel slid the acknowledgement form across a marble side table and placed a pen on top of it. "Sign this, surrender all materials, and leave quietly," he said. "Refuse, and the company escalates." Grant Whitaker's voice came softer, almost kind. "No one wants your daughter involved, Caleb. Bring us the box, and this stays an employment matter." That was the trap. If Caleb signed, he admitted to theft and buried Alana's name under corporate language. If he refused, they would drag Nia into family court before sunset. And if he went home with Derek, he would be leading the wolf straight to the only room he had promised to protect. Vivian stood beside the glass wall, one hand wrapped around the original packet. Her face stayed controlled, but the paper trembled once against her ring. "What box?" she asked. Derek answered too quickly. "A personal item he's using to conceal stolen files." Caleb turned his head. "Slow. Careful. How would you know that?" The question was small. The silence after it was not. Grant stepped in before Vivian could follow it. "Because security recovered chatter about a hidden device. We are trying to protect you." Vivian looked from Grant to Derek, then to Caleb's cracked phone still glowing with the missed school call. For the first time, her certainty looked tired. "Mr. Monroe," she said, "is there company property inside your daughter's room?" Caleb could have lied cleanly and bought 5 minutes. But Nia learned truth by watching him, not by hearing speeches. I don't know what's inside that box, he said. I know it belonged to my wife. And I know no man in this building gets to turn my child's room into a crime scene. The counsel's mouth tightened. That sounds like refusal. It sounds like a boundary, Caleb said. Derek smiled without warmth. Boundaries are easy when you're not explaining them to a custody officer. Vivian's hand stopped on the edge of the packet. A crack. Not enough to save him. Not yet. Grant touched her elbow, guiding her back toward procedure, reputation, and the clean version of a dirty thing. Let security retrieve it, he said. You have a rehearsal. We cannot have this man creating a spectacle before tomorrow's press. Caleb heard the word spectacle and understood what they needed from him. Not silence, not truth, but a picture. A black single father accused of stealing, emotional over his child, resisting security. Something simple enough for powerful people to believe. His phone buzzed again. A voicemail transcription from Nia's school appeared line by line. Nia is safe. We're keeping her in the office until you arrive. Caleb let out a breath, so quiet no one heard it. Then he placed Vivian's folder on the table, kept Nia's drawing in his hand, and said, I'll go home. But Miss Hartwell comes with me, and no one enters my daughter's room until my daughter is confirmed safe. Grant laughed. You don't set terms here. Vivian did not defend Caleb. She did something smaller and more dangerous. She looked at Derek and said, I'm verifying the property myself. Derek's expression changed for less than a second. Then he lowered his eyes to his phone. I'll clear the residence for security, he said. Caleb knew what that meant too late. 20 minutes later, when Vivian's car stopped outside his old apartment building, the hallway light above Caleb's door was swinging. The lock was broken, and from inside Nia's room came the first cracked note of the red music box. That cracked note froze Caleb Monroe before he even crossed his own threshold. The lock was broken. The hallway light swung above Vivian Hartwell's shoulder, flashing across her red dress, the black suits behind her, and the splintered wood near the door. For one fragile second, hope entered the room with them, because Vivian saw what Caleb saw. Derek Vale standing inside Nia's bedroom with gloved hands where no stranger's hand should have been. The little red box sat open on the child's desk, turning slowly, playing a song that sounded wounded. Vivian's voice cut through the apartment. Derek, step away from it. For the first time that day, the room almost believed Caleb. Almost. Derek lifted both hands like an innocent man standing under a church light. Ma'am, I was securing evidence before he could destroy it. Caleb moved past Vivian, not fast, not wild, just a father walking toward the one place he had promised to keep clean. Nia's room was smaller than the closets in Vivian's penthouse, but Caleb had made it gentle. A pink blanket folded at the foot of the bed. Library books on the pillow. Crayon drawings taped in a crooked line above the desk. And in the center of it all, the red music box, chipped at the corner, its lid trembling with each broken note. Caleb reached for it. Derek moved first. The box tipped, struck the edge of the desk, and a folded paper slid from beneath it. Nia's drawing. The bald man. The black suit. The dark ring. Vivian looked down. Her eyes moved from the drawing to Derek's bare hand, then to the engagement reminder glowing on her phone, where Grant Whitaker's black onyx ring caught the cathedral lights in a photograph from that morning. A crack passed through her certainty. Caleb saw it. So did Derek. Interesting, Derek said. A child's drawing hidden under a suspected evidence device. Almost like someone wanted you to find it. Caleb picked up the music box with both hands and turned toward Vivian. If there's anything inside this, it did not come from me. But if you hand it to him, it disappears. Vivian reached for it. False mercy. False victory. Then Derek nodded to the two men behind him. They stepped in hard and fast, not striking, only restraining, turning Caleb's stillness into something that looked like resistance. The music box hit the floor and spilled 3 broken notes across the room. Caleb did not fight them. He only kept his eyes on Vivian. Call the school, he said. Before you call your lawyers, call my daughter's school. One of the men pulled his arms back toward the cracked window. Derek bent close. You should have signed. Vivian's hand hovered over her phone. Guilt had reached her, but procedure still held her by the throat. Then Caleb's cracked phone rang from the floor. Nia's school. Vivian answered on speaker before anyone could stop her. Nia's small voice came through, trembling but clear. Daddy said never go with strangers. But the man with the black ring said Mommy's music box belonged to him. The apartment went silent. Caleb closed his eyes. Vivian looked at the red box on the floor. Then at Derek. Then at Grant's ring glowing on her phone, like a secret trying not to be seen. Nia's voice did what no lawyer at Hartwell Meridian had done all day. It stopped the room from pretending. The man with the black ring said Mommy's music box belonged to him. Vivian Hartwell lowered Caleb's cracked phone slowly, her eyes moving from the red music box on the floor to Derek Vale's face, then to the engagement photo still glowing on her own screen. Grant Whitaker's black onyx ring caught the cathedral lights in that photograph like it had been waiting to betray him. Derek reached for the box. Caleb's voice cut through the room, low and steady. Don't touch it unless she records the chain. His arms were still pinned back by men who wanted him to look dangerous, but his mind stayed calm enough to do what fear could not. Vivian lifted her phone and began recording. Step away from the box, she said. This time, Derek obeyed too slowly. The brass plate under the music box had loosened when it fell. Caleb saw the gap before anyone else did. Not magic, not luck. The same discipline that had taught him to notice a fall state, a clean-skin border, a signature that arrived 6 months too late. Vivian knelt in her red dress and slid the plate aside with the edge of a clean envelope. Inside was a tiny drive wrapped in tissue and a folded note written in Alana Monroe's hand. Caleb did not grab it. His restraint was his last proof of dignity. Read the label, he said. Vivian unfolded the paper. Her voice changed around the words. Vali Harbor Hodges. Derek's jaw locked. The name hit the room like a door opening from the inside. Within an hour, the cathedral rehearsal hall, full of flowers, cameras, board members, and gold chairs, became the place where the lie broke. Grant stood near the altar in his tailored suit, smiling for people who still believed tomorrow's wedding would save the company's image. Then Vivian walked in holding Nia's red music box. Caleb followed behind her, shirt dirty, wrists marked, head high. Security stepped into the aisle. Vivian did not touch Caleb or rescue him like a prize. She turned to the cameras and said, "Let the record play." Caleb placed the music box on the signing table beside the foundation control packet. "Don't clear my name with sympathy," he said. "Clear it with a record." The hall went quiet. The drive opened on a large screen where Vivian's wedding photos had been playing 10 minutes earlier. First came invoices. Vali Harbor Hodges. Hartwell housing grants. Redirected payments. Then the scan page with Alana's false signature, dated after her death. Finally, Alana's voice filled the cathedral, thin with fear but steady with purpose. She named Grant. She named Derek. She said the red music box was the only place Grant would never think to look because men like him never looked closely at the rooms children loved. Grant moved first. This is forged. But the legal analyst from Hartwell appeared on the screen with the metadata Caleb had insisted they preserve. The file predates Mrs. Monroe's death, she said, and the access logs connect to Mr. Whitaker's private server. Grant looked at Vivian, then at the cameras, and for the first time all day, Power did not know where to stand. Vivian removed her engagement ring. The black onyx struck the table once. Small sound. Final sound. There will be no wedding, she said. No one clapped. No one breathed loudly. Caleb only looked at the music box, then toward the exit, where his daughter was still not in his arms. The truth had finally entered the room, but justice still had to walk home. The cathedral stayed silent after Vivian Hartwell's ring struck the table. Cameras were still recording. White flowers still framed the altar. Grant Whitaker stood where a groom was supposed to stand, but the room no longer belonged to him. Derek Vale was held near the side aisle by security officers who no longer looked to him for orders. Caleb Monroe did not watch either man. He watched the red music box on the signing table, the little chipped thing that had been called evidence, bait, stolen property, and a hiding place before anyone had the decency to call it what it had always been Nia's. Vivian turned toward the cameras, but Caleb spoke first. My daughter is not a headline. His voice was quiet, and because it was quiet, the room had to lean toward it. Vivian stopped. That was the first real apology she gave him. Not a speech. Restraint. She lowered the microphone, then faced the board, the lawyers, and the security team whose procedures had nearly helped destroy an innocent man. Caleb Monroe did not steal from Hartwell Meridian, she said. He preserved evidence this company failed to protect. Every report made against his employment, his custody, and his character will be withdrawn in writing. Tonight, no one clapped. Applause would have been too easy. Caleb picked up the music box with both hands and turned toward the exit. Vivian stepped aside and let him pass first. Outside the cathedral doors, the city rushed back in, traffic, cameras, voices calling questions that were no longer his burden to answer. Vivian walked beside him only as far as the curb. Mr. Monroe, she said, and this time the title did not sound like distance. It sounded like respect. The files go to the district attorney tonight. Alana's case will be reopened. Nia's school already has written notice that no Hartwell employee has authority over her. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. He saw guilt there, but he did not make himself responsible for comforting it. Then make sure your people learn the difference between protecting power and protecting the truth. Vivian nodded once. She did not ask for forgiveness. She had not earned it yet. At the school office, Nia ran to him before the receptionist finished saying his name. She saw the marks on his wrists and slowed, her small face folding around fear. Caleb knelt immediately so she would not have to look up at pain. I'm here, he said, and you did exactly right. Nia touched the red music box in his hands. Did Mommy help? Caleb swallowed. Yes, baby. She left us a song strong enough for grown people to finally listen. That night, back in the small room Derek had tried to turn into a crime scene, Caleb placed the music box on Nia's shelf. The room was still poor. The blanket was still faded. The window still rattled when buses passed below. But the air felt different. Nothing in that room had become rich. It had become safe. Nia watched him win the key, and, for the first time, the song played all the way through. Have you ever been misunderstood while you were only trying to do the right thing? Would you have signed the lie to protect your child for one more day, or risked everything so the truth could survive? Tell us what you would have done in Caleb's place. Leave where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Caleb turned off the light, and in the dark, the red music box kept playing softly beside his daughter. No longer a weapon, no longer a secret, just a promise finally returned home.